challenges. We are really glad and we are motivated by this. As we all know, India celebrates 75 years of independence. The culture stands as a reminder of national pride. Indian culture is built upon centuries of histories and heritage, making it as one of the oldest culture of all the time. And it is a vast youth and vibrancy of all sorts. When we look back into the history, in the 19th century, certain social practices like sati, infanticide, and polygamy and a rigid caste system existed. These practices were against human dignities and values. At the forefront of these values were the movements were visionaries such as MODAK and Bedekar. This movement looked for the social unity and strive for the equality, liberty, and freedom. Despite of all these challenges, India remains united with its uniqueness. The country itself has been a living example of tolerance, cooperation, and non-violence over so many centuries and even continues to do it till today. It not only performs the nations united and strengthened, but also hold us alive in old eras, the belief of coexistence with love, peace, and respect till date. So this is the culture of India which is still prevalent today, and we all should encourage and enlighten it. And this is our program for today, so that we realize the importance of our Indian culture and let's celebrate it together in this symposium. Now I would like to request our convener, Dr. Sangeeta Mohanty ma'am, to come forward and proceed. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So good afternoon to everyone present here. I truly appreciate everyone for joining here with us, including all the dignitaries and my dear friends. I welcome all the panelists for our today's panel discussion. MOHSINA ma'am, who will discuss on the subject of food diversity, LOPAMUDRA ma'am, who will discuss on the linguistic diversity, and TANUSHREE ma'am will throw light on the subject of gender diversity. So we'll start our today's panel discussion with MOHSINA ma'am. Ma'am, first of all, I'd like to ask you one question. Do you think food diversity, that is the indigenous food habits of India, have been challenged by the global economic and cultural forces?
Thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me and having a very detailed introduction. And I also congratulate the organizer of this session as well as the whole conference, because when we are talking about cultural diversity, usually we don't look at food as a part of culture. In the hierarchy of the cultural component, food is considered to be way below, okay, in the list. And therefore, very rarely we see the food being discussed at the academic conferences, at the academic seminar. Though food is very integral part of our culture, and we consider food as a Purna Brahma, Anna is a Purna Brahma. Still, when it comes to academics, we don't pay that much attention to food. And therefore, I'm very happy that you thought about food as one component of cultural diversity and invited me to express my views on it. Recently, UNESCO has accepted food as part of intangible heritage. And therefore now, all over the world, food is being studied in detail, academically, also not only academicians, but other people who are involved in the business of food, like chefs or industrialists, restaurateurs, and others are also participating in this discussion. And therefore, when Madam approached me, I took up her invitation because I wanted to interact with you young student who are going to be the researcher in few years, or you are already a researcher, you are already studying and researching in your field of interest. So you should also consider food as a part of your interest, as a sphere of your interest. Now the question on globalization, and do I see globalization and the economic and cultural forces which are changing or which are influencing our food habit as a challenge? See, first thing I want to make it clear over here is that globalization is not a recent phenomenon. It is not as if from the 20th century, after globalization, after the liberalization policy, that suddenly globalization became a part of our existence. No, globalization was always there. Even you can trace this phenomenon from the ancient period. Being a student of history and teacher of history, I may be giving you many references from ancient and medieval past. Please pardon me. Okay, from ancient medieval period, even during the colonial period, there were many things, ingredients, dishes, ideas, which were introduced in our dietary practices, which were accepted by us as part of our food habits. Wherever it was acceptable to us, we accepted it. Wherever it was not acceptable to us, we did not overly rejected it, but we adapted it to suit our religious and other sensibilities. And therefore, globalization is already there. The only difference is that in present time, it has become very visible. It is seen in every aspect of our existence. And therefore, people have started believing that this is a new thing, and it is only in recent past that globalization has been changing our lifestyle, our food habits. It will be very interesting. I would like to give you one whole lecture on how the globalization had changed our food habit from ancient to modern times, but this is not that platform. So globalization, I don't see as a challenge, but I see it positively in the sense that it has encouraged, enhanced our food experience. Okay, it has not made us jingoistic in the matter of food. It has kept us open to accept various ingredients like various fruits, vegetables, spices, these recipes and dishes, and most important of all, the ideas which are also associated with food. And therefore, one should look at this globalization positively. And in present time, when we see that many recipes and many food habits and dishes which are being introduced in our diet, we have now become a global foodie, you can say, because we enjoy Chinese, we enjoy Italian, Mexican, Pan-Asian, Mediterranean. You say it and we have it. And it is not only limited to elite class. Earlier, it was limited to elite class because they were traveling, they were experiencing this different kind of food, and they were getting used to that food, they were liking that food. But now, these things have been come down to even common people. You have Chinese stalls on the roadsides as a street food. You also have pizzas available on the street. So this global food, which was earlier limited to particular group of people, has now become available to all. And why it became popular? Why things became popular? Because we adapted it. The Chinese will not recognize Indian Chinese at all, because we have Indianized it so much to suit our taste, to suit our taste buds. Same thing we did with pizza also. So we adapted their recipes to suit our taste, to suit our beliefs, and therefore we could easily enjoy them. Okay? Another aspect of this globalization is that when new food is introduced, new ingredient is introduced, we try to include it in our regular food also. And we use it as we would have used other ingredients or other known ingredients. And therefore, a new type of food or new type of cuisine has come up, which we can call as a fusion food. It is a fusion of other countries' food and Indian. And that is also one positive thing I see from the globalization point of view. And most important thing, that when we see that food of some other country, other culture is being enjoyed by people, they are liking it, it also make us do some introspection about our own food also. That why our food is not becoming popular globally, or why it is not known from one part of India to another part of India. And then we start making it popular. And fortunately, at present time, the social media is helping us a lot in this matter. So if you go to YouTube or you go to Facebook, there are so many groups who are popularizing, who are making it available, their food habit, their food culture to others. Okay. And that I see also as a part of globalization, because if we are enjoying the food of others, then we should also showcase our own food culture to others. That thing has now brought Indian food on the global platform. Okay, it has put Indian food on international map, I would say. It was there earlier, but it was very limited. It was only few dishes or the cuisine of particular group who has been active in it. For example, people know tandoori or what Westerner call as a curry. But now we know that the curry is a generic term. There are so many types of gravies which are enjoyed by Indians. And therefore, now others have also started understanding that curry is not one particular dish, but it has diverse element in it. And it is different from one part of India to another. And therefore, to call Indian gravies just as a Indian curries is wrong. So in all, I would sum up saying that globalization, I don't see as a challenge in which means that it might compromise your food culture or it may marginalize your food culture. Then I don't see globalization as challenge. I look at globalization as something positive, which will enhance our food culture, which will also make us showcase our food culture to the world.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an insight. I just would like to mention that, as you said earlier, global food were not limited to particular group of people. Like now, it has reached to the common man also. So, do you think it is affecting the rural areas also nowadays, or it is not reached to the rural part yet?
No, it has reached every corner of India. As I told in my earlier answer, that because of the improvement in the means of communication and because of the social media, every person in India has now mobile in his or her hand. They also watch YouTube, and they get interested. For example, if they see any dish, Chinese dish being prepared on the YouTube, they get interested and they would like to try it. If the material is available to them, then they will cook it. If not, then they will come to the town and try to test it. So now even the town and the villages have food of different part of India and the part of world available to them. If you go to the villages now, you will see the Chinese stalls over there as well. You will see that the pizza is being made available in the restaurants over there. So now, as I said earlier, that globalization has become more visible now because it is spread to nook and corner of our country or nook and corner of the world, I would say. So earlier, globalization was limited because it was the things, recipes, everything was available to particular group in particular area. The means of communication was not so good. Then people did not know how that particular thing looked. Even, for example, I will give you tomato. Now tomato has become so common. We cannot imagine our life without tomato. But till the beginning of 20th century, tomato was not so common. People had not seen tomato. They had not tasted tomato, and they had no idea what it is. And there was many rumors about tomato. For example, in Marathi, we called it as a Kharzula Vanga. Vanga is brinjal. Kharzula means which gives you itching. And therefore, it was not appreciated. But now, any new fruit, say passion fruit or dragon fruit, or say any new ingredient which comes in the market, avocado, people do not think twice before buying it and using it. Not only that, but our farmers, considering the market available for it, had also started cultivating it. So that is it. That is how now global dishes, ingredients have reached every part of India.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I would like to continue with the LOPAMUDRA, ma'am. Ma'am, are you there? Our next panelist.
Hi, Jagruti.
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Hope you are doing well.
Yeah,
So
I'm fine.
about the language, the first question every time arises in our mind is, in what does the loss of language signifies a loss of culture? Like, what's the relation between language and culture?
Okay. We have already spoken about language quite a lot, but I'll just ask you one thing. In a sense, if you have to say colors, different colors in your language, how do you say that? Different names of the colors in your language, your mother language.
Like lal, piura, hirwa,
Any other colors?
nira.
Lovely. How does the sound?
Sounds
How does the sound? I think
unusual
the
because
audience.
we
Yeah.
don't use it often, so it sounds unusual.
Yeah, okay. So now suppose suppose in a particular language, which is the dominant language, if we talk about, like we already know we have to accept the fact that there are languages which are dominant and there are languages which are less used or is marginalized, as we can name them, right? Now what happens is when the particular names of the colors in the dominant language is given to us, we only remember those colors in those names. Right, correct. And what happens is the other names which are just beautiful and those colors which exist, we don't get to know them, right? We don't tell those, we only get limited. So suppose it's in English, then we know red, blue, green, yellow, orange, peach, whatever languages is whatever colors are mentioned.
I just like
slowly,
to interrupt and just like tell you, like there's one
yeah,
color like gerua, which
yeah,
is not having, I think, English.
it doesn't have an English
Yeah.
name to it. But how do I go ahead and tell that color? You know, how do I explain it? Either I show something or I say iske saath isko mila do, uske saath isko mila do, and all those things. So I'm just saying it's so what happens is when one particular language starts to dominate, then we lose that particular thing which I'm talking about, the effect, the beauty of that color. And suddenly it's from multicolored, it becomes a monochrome. And when it becomes monochrome, then of course we are losing out so many. And thus I'm just mentioned a color. It can be so many other things which we lose out in slowly, and we don't realize that also. In the process of thinking that, okay, if I speak this particular language, I'll sound modern, I sound intelligent, I sound, I have reached, or I'm cool. So many other things, you know, these are all different states, kinds of, what do you say, identification we have created for ourselves, right? And that is where we are losing out on our cultural diversity. So I just gave a small example of a color. You can put this into any small incidents. I'm sure everyone, all of you youngsters sitting over here, you will understand what I'm trying to say through this small example. Correct? Okay, yeah, tell me.
Yes, ma'am, understood. Ma'am, also then I would like to further ask you that what role mother tongue plays to preserve all this language and culture?
A lot. I'll share an incident. Okay, so we met this youngsters who speak Nar language, which is spoken in Meghalaya. Okay, in the Jaintia tribe, this particular language is spoken, and they are youngsters like you guys. Okay, and they share songs on YouTube, and for me, they are change makers because they are through music. They are saving the language, I mean, basically getting the language into the forefront. So what happened is when I met these youngsters and told, okay, can you share some songs? And of course, they had some modern songs. And that is when I asked them, in your mother language, can you go ahead and sing some of your traditional old songs? Okay, right? And then told traditional old songs, okay, we haven't heard much because most of us, our age children, I mean, youngsters, they go to the city and they pick up English and Hindi, and nowadays Hindi as well. And we usually sing these kind of songs and not our traditional old songs. We don't remember much because your parents used to sing that because they know the mother language properly. So then they told, okay, give us 5 minutes. We'll just sit. And they sat down and they looked at YouTube and they started checking out, and they picked up a particular song. Okay, and immediately they told, okay, we'll sing this, and they started, right? And while they were singing this song, suddenly I noticed one fellow. He had put his hand on his chest and he had closed his eyes, and he was humming it. And all of them were enjoying it, and they were snapping their fingers, and they were, going ahead and giving high fives. All those things were happening. So I asked them, what happened? What happened that suddenly you put your hand on your chest and you closed your eyes? And you won't believe, this fellow, he became so emotional at that point of time. And he's saying that, you know what, the moment I sang it in my mother language, okay, and it's a very traditional song in the sense because my grandparents used to sing it, correct? And suddenly I went into a different phase and I became very emotional. And that is when these youngsters, they decided that, and that is when we all decided that let's do one thing. Let's go ahead and record these songs from the older generation. Okay, and then you go ahead and write it down. Then you go ahead and create cover version of this on YouTube because you all are singers. So what is happening? So how your mother language becomes so important, to go ahead and help you preserve the cultural diversity. Because if I read out the song to you, in the sense, I'll just read out the song to you, because when he read it out in English, the song says, don't forget your roots wherever we are, so that ours will not forget what our ancestors taught us. Our root is to be taken care with love and respect. The tradition or culture that we have is passed by our ancestors, so that we will not be enslaved by outsiders. Don't forget of what we are. Let people from around the world should know us, by all from east to west, that we are from the land that know humanity and godliness. Let us have good manners and be respectful. It is my land, your land, and land of our ancestors. You, the generations of our land, will carry forward the respect, the cultural identity that we have. Don't get distracted by others. The power is in your hand. If you don't know this, if you don't understand what your ancestors have told, if you don't know your mother language, if you don't know how to speak it, if you don't know how to understand it, how are you going to carry it forward? So that is what I wanted to share. So I just say that since you are youngsters over here, and this is an opportunity that I'm being able to meet you guys, I'm just saying that, see, we can talk about a lot of things. You just need to think what I can do. That will make a difference. Speak your mother language, that's the first thing. If you don't respect your mother language, no one is going to respect your mother language. जैसे बोलते हैं ना, मैं अपनी माँ की respect नहीं करूँ तो how can someone else respect it, right? The same way, if you don't respect it, no one is going to respect it. And if you don't speak, then of course the language will die and your children are not going to speak it. And that's how a language dies. First thing is, let's save the language. Then we can talk about cultural diversity and rest all the other things, right? Hope I made some sense. I'm just looking at somewhere where actions can be done.
Yes,
Yeah.
very true. And as you said, technology can be an important part to pass on to the generation nowadays, as you mentioned also. So I completely agree with it. Technology can be a good medium, and effectively, if we use it, we can pass on to the generation, as you gave the example of songs. We can act
Podcast. I'll tell you what we have done. I mean, with our children, how technology we have used it because of COVID. Of course, we could reach to interiors. Okay, and what we did is we told children, you start sharing stories in your mother language, and this was put up on YouTube. So what happened in this process? Children started discussing with their parents and grandparents about stories. So they were all stories about folk tradition, culture, stories about authors from their region or heritage sites from the region. So first thing is, what happened is, there's this platform, there's a space where children are being respected because they know their mother language fluently. Second, interaction between parents and grandparents are happening, which is very, very necessary, right? Third, they're aware about the researching stories. They're aware about so many stories about their region. And fourth, they have a platform where they're coming and telling, and that is on YouTube, right? Or podcast. And then they are in the sense, when they have done that, they are said that they are praised for that. That helps them to go ahead and keep them motivated. And now, as ma'am had mentioned about translation work, how it helps. So they are since there were a team of children from different, who are speaking different Indian languages. So they started their folk tales. They've passed on to the other child who is translating it in the other language. And that child will be sharing it, and which can be created into bilingual books. So what I'm trying to say over here, you guys are so tech savvy. You guys want to do a difference, right? And you can do it. It's just that simple, whether you want to do it, how you want to do it, and what is your objective behind that. I would say you can adopt an endangered language. List out your endangered language and how you can use technology to go ahead and adopt it and create and save a language. If each one of us go ahead and adopt an endangered language and use our whatever use. I have used my skill as storyteller. I have not done any research or anything, but what I've done is right. So I would suggest, since you guys are over here, just to tell you, use your skill, go ahead and save a language.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for such wonderful initiative. It was really great, and we would really follow it in our life. And we might take one topic as for our research also, to choose an endangered language and study on it. Thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you.
Now we move on to the Tanushree ma'am. Tanushree ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes, you are absolutely audible.
Okay, ma'am. The first question I'd like to ask you is, what is the impact of global trends on the gender diversity in India, especially? Like, what are the specific changes we could see after the global trends only, which we could have not seen before?
I think let's start by first defining what we mean by gender diversity, because there's two ways that gender diversity can be looked at, and one of them is trans exclusionary, which I would like to not do. So what is gender is where we should start, right? Gender is basically a social construct, which is a set of dictates of how somebody belonging to a certain quote unquote gender should behave, the roles that they should play, and the kind of clothes they should wear, the language they should speak, the way they should speak, so on and so forth. So gender is a set of dictates that are prescribed to an individual by the society, right? Now, in India, we often have this concept, and especially lately now that, we've had the Trans Rights Act and we've had a little more trans visibility, there's a lot of conversation that this is against our culture, or that, this form of gender diversity is not in line with Indian traditional thought. And all I would say to that is we have multiple instances in our historical art that prove otherwise, right? Whether it be something that's as controversial and salacial as like the Kama Sutra, or it be something as simple as Kathakali, or it be something as religious as Ardhanareshwari, right? It has always existed. It is not that it did not exist. The only difference is that back then, the level of marginalization that was dealt towards people who were trans was so high that they never got any visibility. They only started getting visibility after the global effect, right? Which is what you wanted to talk about. So I don't think that it didn't exist before, the US started talking about it. It's obviously existed, right? We've all seen the trans community in and around our own lives every day. Like, I'm sure, like growing up, कभी ना कभी तो किसी ना किसी शादी पे देखा ही होगा, no matter what, right? या किसी सिग्नल पे देखा होगा, या आप बॉम्बे में रहते हो तो ट्रेन में देखा होगा. So it's always existed. But in terms of academic conversation in India, most of our conversation is still limited to like the binaries of man and woman. We don't even go beyond, the binaries of man and woman into the binaries of like a trans man and a trans woman, let alone moving beyond that into like the non-binary aspect of gender, where there are people like me who don't conform to any gender. I don't identify as a woman or as a man, because I think those roles are restrictive. And why must I force myself to fit into that, right? So it's also about, at the end of the day, right, we don't live in isolation. As much as there have been people trying to create an isolation around our country, we don't live in an isolated world. There is going to be an impact. There is going to be cross-cultural, influences. And it works both ways. You go to the US, I mean, I live in New Jersey half of the year, and वहाँ पे आप देखोगे कि जो ट्रांस कम्युनिटी है वहाँ की, वो बोलेगी, वो मेरे को अर्धनारीश्वरी के बारे में बताती है कि अरे तुम्हारे तो धर्म में ही है, right? So it works both ways, because, and I think in India we always make this mistake of looking at globalization as something that is happening to us instead of something that we are a part of. हम भी हमारा कल्चर बाहर लेके जा रहे हैं ना, हमारे कल्चर से भी वहां पे इम्पैक्ट पड़ रहा है ना. न्यू जर्सी में हर दूसरे लेफ्ट टर्न पे एक इंडियन रेस्टोरेंट है, राइट? So it works both ways. It's not like something that is being done to us. I think we need to kind of come out or break out of that slavery mindset from colonization and start realizing that we do have agency and we have created change. And with regards to gender diversity, it has been a two-way road, because we do have cultural, historical, artistic contexts that prove that gender diversity beyond binaries has existed in India for ages, which is something that a lot of quote unquote Abrahamical cultures don't have. And so I wouldn't say that we have become more gender diverse after, white influence. I think we've just learned to talk about it, or we finally have the language for it. Because to date, I don't have the language for non-binary in Hindi. मैं कैसे समझाऊं किसी like स्कूल के बच्चे को कि non-binary क्या होता है हिंदी में, जिसको इंग्लिश नहीं आती. और यहाँ पे भी हम language की बात कर रहे हैं. We're talking about preserving languages and all of this. But all of us have only spoken in English. हमने ना हिंदी में बात करी है ना मराठी में बात करी है. एक दो वर्ड्स यहाँ वहाँ बस. तो वही बात है कि आप You got to walk the talk, yeah. Just that.
Yes, ma'am, as you rightly said, that maybe it existed from the history and it's still existing, but people don't want to accept it and they don't want to acknowledge it. The acknowledgement is not there.
I think in India, the thing is that we've never had these conversations openly on public forums, on streets, on chai ka tapris. नहीं हुई है वो बातें. At least अब वो बातें हो रही हैं, right? At least अब मैं चाय के टपरी में अपने कॉलेज में खड़े होके बोल सकती हूँ कि हाँ मैं नॉन बाइनरी हूँ. तो बातें होना शुरू हो रही हैं. And with regards to like not wanting to accept things, कब तक नहीं accept करोगे? मतलब कभी तो you will have to come into the actual world, right? You can't keep living in your privileged bubbles. Someday they will break. Either you break them or your next generation will break them for you. And that's your decision. If you wanted to be prepared for your child maybe being gay, or your child maybe being non-binary, or your child maybe being trans, and like know that you have the information to protect your child and take care of your child, or do you want to just shut your eyes and be like, nahi, aisa kuch nahi hota, and then tomorrow have a child who becomes excruciatingly traumatized and suffers and finds it really difficult to fit into society? That's a decision every individual has to take. And you can't, what is that? There's an idiom, right? You can take the horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. Something like that. That.
Also, ma'am, can we see this gender diversity in social aspect? We have seen it, but how does it affect the organizational culture also, which we have seen many times across newspapers or in the news channel, that how gender diversity is being affecting the organizational culture also? Can you throw some light on this topic?
Sure. Before I do that, I have to give a trigger warning. I am going to be talking about sexual abuse in this little section. If anybody is going to be triggered, maybe mute me for a while. I'll do like a thumbs up once I'm done so that you can like unmute. But yeah, okay. Just in case you need that, I'm going to count to 5 before I start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay. So gender diversity within organizational structures, we're still struggling to get even like enough women into the workforce, or get them paid enough, or make sure that they're safe enough that they're not getting molested by their bosses every day, that there's not like a Me Too post about everyone every other day. Like, who can I trust, right? And sure, we've created Vishaka committees and we've created posh acts and all of that, but the implementation of it is sorely lacking, to the extent that there are people who sit on Vishaka committees that I've sat down to have conversations with, and they've like actually said, "Yaar, ye aadhi ladkiyan to jhooti bol rahi hoti hain." And these are women. It's not like it's a man. Like if it was a man, I could let it go, be like, okay, fine, you know, you're a man, whatever. But these are women. That's the level of internalization of patriarchy in our country. And that is active work that we have to do as individuals to break that generational internalization of patriarchy. And until we do that, it is not going to be possible to have a society or an organization that is truly gender diverse. There are a lot of organizations definitely that are doing amazing work with regards to gender diversity, right? A couple that I would love to mention would be Zomato. They have period leaves. I'm sure like 5 people behind the screens right now, when I said period, were like, yo, why is she talking about that? But yes, women menstruate, individuals menstruate, and they need a leave, because research has actually shown that menstruation, the cramps that we deal with during menstruation, the pain level is the same as a heart attack. So all menstruators deal with 3 to 4 days of heart attack level of pain every month. Yeah, like, and it's amazing that Zomato gives people that, right? Or if I look at an organization like Trell, their marketing department is primarily made up of like cis women, which is great. They allow you to take mental health days, which is amazing, right? So it's not that organizations aren't working towards gender inclusivity or gender diversity. They are. It's just a matter of fact that there is not enough research on what it takes to create a safe working environment for a woman, a non-binary person, or a trans person. There is not enough research on it because we didn't talk about it, because people other than cis male people only entered the workforce like what, 100 years ago? Nothing more than that. I know there was a history teacher here some time ago. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't remember this, but yeah, like whenever the suffragettes movement happened, right, which I guess was about 150 years ago, which is nothing in comparison to, the 2000 years at least that, men have been in the workforce. And it's also important to note that men are the ones who've created these rules, who've created these organizations, who've created these organizational structures. And they don't have the same lived experience of a woman or a non-binary person or a trans person. And therefore, they're not capable of creating the right kind of affirmative actions to make workplaces safe for women or non-binary people or trans people, or in general, just non-men. So while organizations are definitely working towards gender diversity, I believe that there is a lot of education that is lacking in being able to truly create that, wherein nobody is actually unintentionally or intentionally harmed. You're on mute.
Yes, ma'am, you truly said all the correct things, and I believe the awareness should be there, and hope things would get better. And thank you for actually talking about such a taboo topic, which was never discussed, especially at the academic or educational level. Thank you, ma'am.
Of course.
Now we'll move on again to MOHSINA, ma'am. Are you there?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I would like to ask you for the second question. What are the elements of food diversity in India and how to sustain them? From your previous topic, as you said that there are some elements. Now, what are those elements and how to sustain them?
See, first of all, India is a very vast country and we have a diverse climate from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Bengal to Gujarat, Western India. So that is the first basis of our food diversity, because whatever climate is there and the type of soil which is available for cultivation determines what is going to be the base of your food, what is going to be foundation of your diet. Okay. So that is the first diversity we see. So you say that in North India, or especially if you start from Kashmir, then in Kashmir, they eat rice. When you come to Punjab and Uttar Pradesh, wheat or the rotis are their staple food. When we go to South, again, rice dominates. Okay. So that is the first diversity we see, and which is the basis of the food culture of particular region, first of all. Then this is nature, because it is a climate, it is a land, it is a local ecology. So it is nature. Then comes the culture. And here, religion plays an important role in determining the food diversity. Here also, we have so many religions which has been practiced by Indians. So we have our Hindu religion. Within Hindu religion also, there are so many subgroups, sects are there. So the food of the Shaivas will be different from the food of the Vaishnavas. Okay. So that is also there, which we don't consider because we don't know details of it. We always believe that all Hindus eat same, all Hindus have similar approach toward food. It is not so. We need to go into detail of the religious beliefs and practices also to understand the diversity in food habit of different groups. Then the major religious group like Christianity and Islam and the Parsis, Zoroastrians, they're also there. So they also brought their own food ethos introduced in India that also has contributed towards the diversity. So food, what to be eaten, what is prohibited, what is taboo, is determined by your religious beliefs and practices. Okay. And then you also have in India, we have different castes and communities. And caste wise also, there is a food diversity. Though, as I just said, the region, which is the foundation for the first diversity, within the region also, because of the religion, there will be a more diversity, there will be interdiversity and caste also. The people, for example, I will give you example from Maharashtra because I'm familiar with Maharashtra. So I will give you the example from Maharashtra. So in Maharashtra, we have Brahmin community, we have Marathas, we have CKPs or Chandravanshya Kayastha Prabhus, then we have Shepherds, Dhangar community. The basic food which they use is determined by from which region they come. But how they cook it and what are the cultural significances attached to that food is determined by their caste. Okay. So in here, I'm not talking about caste and I'm not saying that the caste is something good. And from not that point of view, I'm not talking from sociological point of view. I'm talking here from the food point of view. A very well-known Marathi author, Durga Bhagwat. She's social activist also. Those who study Marathi literature know about her because she has been she has also been the president of Sahitya Sammelan or the literary conference. And she has been very firebrand lady, and she was also interested in food. She has documented food of the Adivasi community, tribal communities, and she has written very detailed about different recipes. And this particular statement of her, I really like. And she has been very liberal. She did not believe in caste system or anything. But she said that one should preserve the caste diversities which are reflected in food, because that is also an identity of that particular group. Though, and that even I believe in, because being a food researcher, I would like to see into this diversity and understand it, what is the reason behind it. So the caste and communities also have their particular food style, dietary practices, and cultural significances attached to those practices. And being a historian and being a researcher, I'm very much fascinated with this aspect, the cultural aspect. So these are the basic elements of food diversities in India. When we talk about, just 2 days ago, there we had a lecture from of one Australian food historian, and she was talking about Indian food and present Indian food, and she said that you have so much diversities, whereas in Australia, across Australia, which is so vast, there is no such diversity exist. What will be eaten by an Australian in one particular region will be eaten by other in some other region also. Whereas in India, the food of the Kashmiri and the food of Tamilian will be vastly different. It will be diverse. But again, the undercurrent of those food or the underline will be the belief towards the food, that they do not consider food just as a material which sustain us biologically, but we believe that it also helps in our spiritual growth. Okay, every religion in India, every group in India do not look at food only as carbohydrates or vitamins or protein or fat. For them, it goes beyond it. It talks about interpersonal relation. It talks about spiritualism and all those aspects. And therefore, in spite of this diversity, what Nehru has said, that this is, we also see the unity in diversity in the matter of food as well. I hope I had answered your question.
Yes, ma'am, it's very clear now. Ma'am, another question I had in my mind is why always we might have heard like Northeastern food culture is very ethnic. Like, what is different about their food culture?
I'm not very familiar with the food culture of North Indian. And I think it is very sad that we are not very familiar with.
Region.
Yeah. Because as I I'm not very familiar with their food culture. So I won't be able to comment much on it. But now I think gradually, in some part of India, their food culture is being introduced. And if you remember, there was one movie also on North Indian food, okay, when they wanted to cook their particular dish and how they had to struggle for it. That thing I think we need to change. We must understand that that is their food. It may be different from us, but it is their food, and we should appreciate it that they means if they want to cook it, then we should support them and we should allow them to cook. But then this particular aspect now in present times is very debatable and also controversial, because now we have started believing in that food of one particular group is the best and others is not so good. The choices which they have made is wrong, and therefore they should stop them. They should be banned from eating that type of food. I do not believe in it, as I just not told you that the food habit is determined by many things. There are many components which determines our food habit. First, try to understand it. Why it has been in their diet. Why that particular food has been in their diet. And then, because it is wrong for you, does not mean that it should be banned. We talk about democracy. Do we practice democracy? No. And food has now come into the forefront of this crisis of the democracy which we are facing. So some are now dictating what others will eat. And on what basis they are dictating? They are dictating on the basis of their political power and also on their economic power. Okay? Because we have finances in our hand, we are politically and economically powerful, and therefore we will tell you what you should eat. That is eroding our diversity. I think one must understand that each work should be allowed, as in the matter of gender, as in the matter of language. This is also the choice which person should be allowed to make. It should not be forced on anyone. One should not say that because my type of food is good, everyone should eat it. Your type of food is bad. Okay? No. First understand why that particular food habit has developed, and then accept it, respect it. And this is the need of the time. And you youngsters who are sitting in the audience, who are going in the world, and when someone tells you, no, this is bad food, and therefore it should be bad, and you should ask that person in what way it is bad, why it is bad, and for whom it is bad. And then you should accept it, whether you want to eat it or not. Just don't go and don't follow the herd mentality. Okay, I will advise you to respect the diversity of India in all the matters and enjoy it. And when just now when Tanushree was talking about gender and gender diversity, now at present time, everything we trace to our ancient past. Everything in ancient time is good. But in ancient time also, gender diversity was there and accepted. All of you know about Mahabharata. But do you know the Bruhannada, Arjun, who has become Bruhannada, when they were in the court of Virat, King Virat of Viratnagar? So you cannot say that only up to this part I'm going to believe in my ancient past. What is not suitable to me, I'm not going to be. There is very much, there are too many things I could talk on this issue, but diversity, and especially in country like India, one should accept and respect. Respecting other is very, very important.
MOHSINA
Yes.
ma'am, with your consent, could I possibly comment?
Yes,
on,
yes, sure.
Thank you so much. Sorry, go ahead. You had to say something?
No. If you could throw more light on Northeastern food.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
And my knowledge of Northeastern food is very, very minuscule, you can say.
Right. I would definitely say mine is not expansive either. However, I have had the fortune of traveling there and do have like college friends from there. And we have had this conversation because I'm a massive foodie. So basically the thing is that when you look at the Northeast, right, as quote unquote mainlanders, we look at it as one whole singularity, whereas it's not. Even within a singular quote unquote state, there are multiple tribes and multiple different cultures and multiple different cultural practices or food practices even, right? And when any place is that diverse, it becomes very difficult to bring that conversation into the mainstream, especially when mainlanders like us have constantly looked down upon their way of living itself. But we love our momos, right? And we love the thukpa, and we will have that, and we will talk as if it is our own. But when it comes to, you know, some of their more peculiar food eating habits, like eating maybe beef or pork or dogs or cats or other things that mainlanders don't eat, we will very quickly shun them for it. And if any individual trying to bring their culture into a place where, you know, their culture is the quote unquote odd one out is going to get shunned, it becomes very difficult for them to continue that conversation even if they want to, right? So I think that if we want to talk about food diversity with regards to the Northeast, we need to start by first calling it the Northeast in its entirety, right? Let's call it what it is. You want to talk about Assam, let's talk about Assam. You want to talk about Nagaland, let's talk about Nagaland. You want to talk about Meghalaya, let's talk about Meghalaya. But stop painting it with one brush, because as long as we keep doing that, we are never going to be able to even get to the point of understanding the food habits of the dominant people there, let alone the actual masses of that place. So I think that is like a slight mindset change that we all have to make to be able to kind of look into that more and learn more and just a little more tolerant, I guess, right? In terms of individualistic choices. And that is where like diversity is rooted, right? As long as you find a way to be a little more respectful and a little more tolerant, diversity will flourish on its own. It's just that we're
Yes.
very intolerant as a people.
No, and I would like to add one more thing over here. Northeast is like very far away from us. Within Maharashtra, again, I will talk about Maharashtra. Within Maharashtra also, do we know anything about the tribal food? Do we know anything about Dalit food? Now, in recent times, one cookbook on Dalit food has come into market, that is in Marathi. And that has opened our eyes what type of food choices they had to make, because we had imposed those choices on them. Okay, so now things are improving because people are now becoming aware of this diversity and they started talking about it. They are taking pride in their own diversity. I think that is very important.
Yes, ma'am, very true. As MOHSINA ma'am and TANUSHREE ma'am both have cleared all our doubts about it. And thank you, TANUSHREE ma'am, also for clearing on the northeastern part. And according to what MOHSINA ma'am said, like there has to be certain recognition and freedom to choose our own food. Now, I was just thinking on that part, like, do we have to in the future conduct or construct any amendments related to food in the constitution, right to have food? Anyway, so it was really great discussion. Now,
It actually
again,
already exists now, by the way. Sorry. But the right to choice covers your right to choice of food. So it's already there. It's just a matter that we currently, and I'm so sorry if I'm going to get cancelled for this, but we currently have a government that refuses to adhere to the constitution. And there's not much we can do about that.
Yes, I also had tried to show it to you, not directly and openly, because this is the online platform has its own issues. So, but what I was trying to say is similar to what TANUSHREE has just now mentioned.
I'm okay with going to jail.
yes, sir, it's cleared, and we surely got the message that you both have to share with us. Now, my next question is to LOPAMUDRA ma'am. Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry.
Ma'am, as you mentioned in your earlier context, I would like to ask you, like, why there are some languages that are very popular in India while others are not that popular? Like, why there is this huge difference?
First, first of all, if we talk about why certain languages are popular and why certain languages are not popular, I think even you can give that answer right over here right now. As Tanushree mentioned, you're speaking in English, right? So there's a dominance about language in the sense, like, there are majority of people who understand a particular language at one go. So why that is happening? One is, of course, like, we had a colonial rule which overpowered certain areas. Second, when we talk about languages, like, for example, livelihood patterns of people, when they lose out on the livelihood patterns, they migrate, right? So first, the migration of the language happens, because when they're migrating to a different place, then they lose out on their original language and they try to adapt the language which is spoken over there. And slowly, so first the migration of language, then the migration of the space, all those things happening, and then the language slowly dies. And they go ahead and start speaking the language which is used in that particular place. Another is, of course, when we talk about language and one language being more dominant, sometimes, they think that this language is to avoid any kind of social discrimination. Even they go ahead and try to avoid their language and go ahead and pick up another language. Even that happens. So there are reasons, but just because of time limit, I'm just putting it across that these are somewhere 2-3 very important reasons where they go ahead and some languages become dominant, is, of course, get marginalized. And of course, when the number of speakers reduce, then the language becomes marginalized, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now, ma'am, I would like to ask you another question. During Sangeeta ma'am was giving your introduction, she said that you are a performing artist. So as a performing artist, do you think that language matters in popularizing that particular art? Does it play an important role over there?
Of course, because if you talk about Bhojpuri language was on the verge of almost, it was on the verge of dying, okay? But because of, when movies started, when they started having movies in Bhojpuri language, and of course, art, when they were discussed in theaters, and when it was used, and people started to watch that, and they understood that, and then became popular. That's how the language also gained momentum. So performances in the traditional, so when we have our storytelling performances, the more we get traditional artists, and they speak in they share stories in their languages, and and there is an interpreter. So of course, people who listen to it, who know the language, they develop a kind of a connect, and slowly other people also say that, oh, this language is getting some kind of recognition, and I know the language, and let me go ahead and share a story or perform something. And of course, there'll be someone who would understand that and recognize it. And that's how a small ripple can create more, little bit of recognition towards that language, will create the other person or other artists to come over and share. And that's how the language can be spoken more or discussed more, or a buzz is buzz is created around the language. That is what we are talking about, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for such wonderful insight. We really understood the meaning and the medium of language. Now I would like to move towards Tanushree ma'am. Tanushree ma'am.
Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, my last question would be, like, how movies portray or important role in gender diversity, because we have seen from the
I like that you saw that I got triggered. Okay, sorry, but please complete your question. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, like how will when we talk about the Indian history, like from the times movies started, they are playing a very important role in portraying the gender diversity, like how specific gender should be. So can you explain more how is it playing an important role and how will it play important role in the future? Will there will be changes or no?
First, let's deconstruct this entire idea that a gender should be a certain way, right? Stop. Because that is where it starts, right? If you stick to gender roles or if you stick to gender stereotypes, or you think that a gender should be a certain way, you're going to continue that oppression. Willingly or unwillingly. I'm not saying कि आप जानबूझ के कर रहे हो, वो होगा, आपके कंट्रोल में नहीं है वो, जब तक आप वो लैंग्वेज या वो थॉट प्रोसेस अनलर्न नहीं कर लेते, राइट? एंड इट्स वेरी सिंपल, राइट? जैसे कि एक कल्चर अगर हम देखें तो वो कहता है कि औरत को घर पे रहना चाहिए, किचन में रहना चाहिए, सूट साड़ी सलवार पहनना चाहिए और कुछ नहीं पहनना चाहिए. दूसरा कल्चर कहता है कि औरत को घर पे भी रहना चाहिए, किचन भी करना चाहिए, ऑफिस भी जाना चाहिए, बच्चे भी संभालने चाहिए, सब कुछ करे और सब कुछ करते हुए उसको हॉट दिखना चाहिए, right? Those are the two like kind of stereotypical boxes that have been created for women in our country. So we need to break that concept that that box needs to exist itself. It doesn't. A woman can choose to do whatever she wants to do. A man can choose to do whatever they want to do. As long as your actions are not causing active harm to an individual, right? For example, someone could get very offended that as someone who was born as a woman, I have like a short haircut with like a buzz and everything, right? But is this causing any active harm to anybody? No, right? But it's bringing me joy. So it's a matter of understanding that कि जो gender roles हैं, चाहे हमें movies से दिख रहे हैं वो या family से मिल रहे हैं, wherever we're getting them from. It's a matter of understanding why are we against this idea? Why are there so many feminists in India that say that women should not cook? Women can cook if they want to. The entire point of feminism or gender diversity is that a person should be allowed to do what they want to do regardless of their gender identity, right? To break that box. Now, when we come to talking about movies, I believe truly and wholeheartedly that movies have done more damage than good. And I truly and wholeheartedly believe that for the foreseeable future, they will continue to do more damage than good. We have movies like, I believe it's called Raja Ki Aayegi Baraat, where a woman gets assaulted and then has to go to court and relive the assault in a very, very nasty manner. And the justice that she gets is that she has to marry the person who assaulted her. Or we have a movie like Chandigarh Kare Ashiki right now, where this person beats up a trans person and acts like it's not a big deal. That's extreme violence that was shown. And it's been portrayed as though it's love, which is even more scarier, right? Because then it's kind of propagating the cycles of domestic violence that a lot of us have lived through. Or even if we look at what was the other Ayushmann Khurrana movie about being gay, that was also really weird. It propagated really negative stereotypes about people who come from a gender diverse space, right? So I wholeheartedly believe that movies will continue to do a lot more damage than good. Sure, we'll have like the one-off Pink that comes out every once in 5-6 years. But let's be realistic. How much of India actually watched Pink? Versus how much of India watched Raja Ki Aayegi Baraat or Chandigarh Kare Ashki, right? So it's not that good movies don't exist. They do. It's just that they're not palatable to our demographic. And therefore, the movies that cause more active harm end up being the ones that are watched more often, right? Even if we look at, let's move away from movies, let's look at TV, which is far more accessible, right? At least हर गांव में आज एक TV तो है, जहां सब लोग जाके शाम को मिलके चाय पीते हुए टीवी देखते हैं. टीवी पे क्या देखते हैं हम? कपिल शर्मा का शो देखते हैं. कपिल शर्मा के शो में हम क्या देखते हैं कि लड़के लड़की बन के मजाक उड़ा रहे हैं. सो आपने क्या किया उसमें? इफेक्टिवली आपने मेरी जेंडर आइडेंटिटी को एक जोक बना दिया है और पूरा इंडिया उस पर हंस रहा है फैमिलीज में बैठ के. बट कल को इफ आई गो इनटू the same family function wearing a pantsuit, or if my partner goes into the same family function wearing a sari, we are going to be laughed at because they will think we are a joke. Whereas we're not a joke, we're just expressing ourselves the way that we want to, the way that we feel comfortable. But media as a whole has made our existence into a joke in India. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yes, ma'am. As you said, I believe movies can be really a powerful medium. And if we use it effectively and wisely, it can really be a good medium for awareness. So it's a
Hopefully
time. Yes. So thank you so much to all the panelists. Now I would like to hand over to my convener of the symposium, Dr. Sangeeta ma'am.